Kriti Kamala Shane Bhajatara Charana Deko Shantamone Premonayani Aparupa Priya Darshana Aparupa Priya Darshana.
Namaste, welcome to SRV Oregon Ashram. We're here today with Babaji Bob Kindler to do another spiritual interview. Thank you for joining us, Babaji. Namaste.
Namaste.
And once again, with everything that we try to do here at SRV, in the line of questioning, in the line of seeking truth, we try to do it with a sense of earnestness and sincerity. We try to make sure that all of the questions that we put forth are sincere in their foundation. And so what we're trying to do is create a platform first, a foundation for seeking that truth with a capital T that we always talk about. And we recognize that a lot of times we need to infuse our sadhana with a certain enthusiasm. And for this round of the spiritual interview, we want to recognize that we infuse it with the musical tradition. And we very much revere that tradition, and I want to help tease out some of the teachings of the Vedanta through music and through the offerings that Jayama music puts out. And before we dive deep into the selections that I've taken, we're going to have three different pieces that we're going to dive into. I want to first kind of talk about one of the teachings you've given us in the past about the Vakdevi. And the Vakdevi teaching is that the Devi is the mother of all sounds and all matrikas, and everything that is struck comes out from her. Is that a fair characterization?
Yes, basically we look at the Vakdevi, if you want to go into a philosophical explanation, as the mother who presides over the word, Om. Om would be like a vast infinite pool of potential. And the Vakdevi, it even says this in the Rig Veda, the Vakdevi will, as it were, breathe upon the waters, as they use that metaphor in the Bible too, in the beginning. And in the Hindu tradition, in the Vedic tradition, it's Tantric tradition too, it's this idea about the Vakdevi breathing on the waters, or using these, breathing just being a symbol, but actually focused concentration into the word so that worlds will come out of it, and so forth. Ramakrishna said, the first time I heard the word Om, or he began to follow it like following a sound over sand dunes from a distance, and finally you get over the last sand dune and there's this beautiful ocean. Well, it's an ocean of potential. And he said when he saw it, he made some very interesting comments. He said, I saw that all the worlds were coming in and out of it at all times, and there was no time passing. So that's a very interesting thing to think about. It's very profound right away. And nobody was striking it. It wasn't like a gong would strike it, and the sound was inherent in the gong, the teaching that he used to use. But it was just striking itself, as it were. It was self-revelation all the time.
So there's a word for that, anahata.
Anahata.
Right. And so there's
also Shabda Brahman.
Shabda Brahman.
Yeah.
You could say that there's the ahata, the struck sound, that comes out of the anahata, which is the unstruck.
Which, interestingly enough, is also the name of the heart chakra.
Oh, the heart chakra.
Anahata. Yeah.
Is there a way that we can use musical teachings and offerings to go and trace back from the ahata to the anahata?
My perspective is that it's not that is there a way, it's that is the way. I turn the words around a little bit. I think that everyone who sincerely follows the path of music or sound, whether it be spoken sound, if you're faithful to the spoken word, like you're speaking truth, or you're even teaching aparavidya, like medium knowledge or lower knowledge, science, math and all these. If you have any kind of fealty to the word, then you're following a path of Shabda Brahman when you're speaking about or using words, or alphabets, as you were just saying, mantrakas. And so you should have an innate knowledge of the power in the word, which is Vakdevi. Shakti is also another word we use for that in our tradition. And so then if you're specifically dedicating your works, say a musician for instance, to the Vakdevi. I mean, I know very famous musicians that I've had conversations with and even played with in my career, like say Ali Akbar Khan. He was always worshipping the mother of sound, the Vakdevi, Saraswati. He would even, they say, even had a picture of Sri Sharda Devi, in his secret shrine in his room. I heard that from one of his devotees, his followers in music. So this is someone who would dedicate their music and everything to God, as it were, to Divine Mother, that Shakti power. And that's really specifically following the path of Shabda Brahman. And you give up fame and you give up money, you give up success. Those are all incidentals, see? And you focus on this one path. So that would be somebody who would be more conscious of following the path of Shabda Brahman, which again, Holy Mother, Sri Sharda Devi, mentioned in her teachings quite often, the path to God through sound.
Is that the, do they also call that Nada Yoga or Nada Brahma?
Nada Brahma, yeah, is another sound for it.
Okay.
Yeah. Nadis are nerves, and there's basically, when you bring in those kinds of teachings, you're talking about the path of conscious vibration. Because I'm speaking, you're hearing, it's passing across the air, which is held by the ether. The sound has a meaning. The meaning is getting struck in your eardrum, in your mind, and in your heart. Hopefully, if both are active, both chakras are open and receptive, and that's producing a certain salient effect that through music or through spoken word or anything, everyone is doing that actually. But some people are taking it in for pleasure. Some people are taking it in and they don't like what they hear. They can't accept the truth, or it's mixed with falsehood and they're confused.
They don't have the meaning correct.
Don't have the meaning correct, and maybe don't have the clarity of mind. Khyati, they call it in both Buddhism and Vedanta, which is a right perspective, as Lord Buddha called it. So if you have that first, and then the words are coming to you, they're very profound. Even maybe moderately nominal words are very profound to you. And so also the words are connected to the objects. Like if I say chair, or if I say picture, and I see a picture of Sri Ramakrishna, then it means so much more to me if I have this idea or this knowledge that all is a vibration. So you're following Nada Brahma vibration through the nadis, which is these subtle nerve endings, or subtle nerve currents and carriers. The teaching we often give is if you took a man and made him a hologram, and you could see his nervous system, enough nerves to connect together to reach to New York or whatever they say, and then you'd see that was the outer, actually inside the flesh are these things. So it's kind of an internal, but it's not the internal we're talking about. Inside of the internal nerves of the body, there are 100,000 nerves in each one of those physical nerves. Those aren't on this dimension, as it were, and that's what takes you into dream and takes you into samadhi and takes you into deep sleep. Consciousness after death will go along this nervous passageways, and that's really all has to do with Nada Brahma and the passageways, the nadis, the subtle nerves.
Each one of those subtle nerves, all those 100,000, can be struck separately to create.
Should be opened like pathways. Your consciousness is what will open those. Your intelligence, buddhi, the Buddha. I am awakened. So if you open these subtle passageways, like through meditation and so forth, then this Shakti power will flow through them, and you can do this consciously. Sometimes they liken the carrier of consciousness, they call it in the Rig Veda. This great being is the carrier of consciousness, the winged carrier of consciousness. That would be Garuda. And so Vishnu rides on Garuda, and that's a symbol for Vishnu being able to go to all these different worlds, say kingdoms of heaven within you, if you like, through these passageways, but he sheds his gross body and he sheds his gross senses first, and then he gets on this Garuda, which is prana, and then it becomes psychic prana, and he's coursing throughout the worlds. Mm-hmm. So omniscience, omnipresence, omnipotent, all has to do with that. The three ohms, I like to call it. But and you too can get on that Garuda bird and ride it inward. It's not like training a dragon, but it's training a sort of internal dragon that takes you much deeper.
Amazing. Yeah, we're just off on a roll right now, talking about the depths of how we revere the spiritual sound and how it's so imbued. So I want to
go off on all sorts of tangents that are related. But stick to point here.
So I want to jump in on the first of our musical pieces that I want to talk about today. So to first allow our viewers and listeners to get a taste of this piece. We're going to play it now. So this piece was called Maki Amar Kalore, and this is a famous Bengali piece that whenever I hear it played, I always think of Swami Vivekananda outside of the first shrine, Ramakrishna shrine, walking down the steps. I think it was one of his last days, maybe his last day, and he was singing, "Oh, my mother, Kali, is she always black or is she sometimes different color?" And I recall you and I actually on those steps when we were on pilgrimage, walking down those steps, and I think you turned to me and said, "Are you ready to give up the body now?" as Swamiji did. So this song is definitely imbued with a lot of meaning. I want to let you describe to us some of the hidden meanings behind
that bhajan.
That bhajan.
Yeah, the bhajan is the name we would assign to that. At first could make a distinction between that and kirtan, which is repeating one powerful phrase over and over again. The West has kind of become attracted to that, as they've become attracted to Hatha Yoga, for instance, more of the surface practices. But when you get into bhajans, and then particularly stotrams, those are two other varieties or kinds of sacred music that all of a sudden you have a very profound dharmic meaning attached to them, to a bhajan, with some devotional flavor in. But then you get attached to or attracted to a stotram, which is totally non-dual. So this is like the three steps of awareness. You might say dualism for kirtan, and qualified non-dualism for bhajan, and then non-dualism for stotrams. Anyway, to clothe what I'm going to say about that in that introduction. So this is a bhajan, Maki Amar Kalore, by Ramprasad, or was that Kamalakanta? Because I've learned many songs by both Kamalakanta and Ramprasad in India from the brahmacharis and from the swamis when I placed myself in their atmosphere. Thank you for being in my presence, Yuzio, they would say. So when I did that, then they taught me all these songs, and I tried to do my best pronunciation on the Bengali and on the Sanskrit and so forth, on the Western vocal cords and Western tongue. But basically, they sang these songs, and I recorded them, and then I took them home and put them into English translations, and also put English music, more English-oriented classical music chords behind them, because I was a Western classical musician. So that was one of the earlier songs that I learned, and my best memory around that is that when I played it for my guru, Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj, here in Portland, back in the late 70s, early 80s, he teared up a bit, and that's very unusual for him. one of the brahmacharis came up to me later and said, you know, you kind of made him cry. You sang this song and it struck him very deeply from his own early days in India before he came west as a Swami of the Vedanta Society in New York and then down in California and then here. So he actually talked with me personally afterwards and told me what a beautiful bhajan that was and how powerful its meaning is. And you can tell that it, of course, reminds him of Mother Kali, which would immediately remind him of Mother Sharda. Because Mother Sharda, Sri Ramakrishna's divine consort, Sharda Devi, or Holy Mother, they're calling her now, with some 5 or 6 million children consciously aware of her. And we just had a person a couple days ago call us and said, I discovered Mother Sharda through your books and so forth. I want to order more books and spread this message, you see. So Mother calls to people when they're ready. And it's an underground river kind of Vedantic secret that people all of a sudden get attracted to her. And she picks the right time and attracts them through some means. They've prepared themselves in some way.
Speaking of attraction, my personal story with SRV, you probably know, is I was wandering around Hawthorne Street, just a few blocks away, at a music store called Timbuktunes. I think it was just here on 5th 48th. And lo and behold, Mother had placed for me Shakti Bhajans by Jayama Music. And I picked it up and put it in my car CD player, and that thing was just playing non-stop for about a year until I finally decided to dig a little deeper and figure out who is Jayama Music and and what's, you know, I want to learn a little bit more about this, and so that was how I got brought into this tradition, and so I have a very high reverence for the music and what it can reveal.
Yes.
You know, I know Annapurna, you know, doing the camera behind us, also
Our
has a
camera
very
person. Yes.
very great story behind the Shakti Bhajans tape and how she wore that out for
Back in the
2
cassette
years,
days, yes.
2 years continuously. So,
Well, the actual meaning about that, it could go different ways, but why is my Mother Kali always black? Because Mother Kali is seen as the blackness of infinite space, and her hair is black, it's flowing out like prana through the universe, and all beings are living on this prana. And you know, her form is black, her feet are black, and so it goes on with different symbologies and explanations of why Mother Kali is always black, like Dikambari is a name for her, clothed in space. A very nice name. So if you were going to meditate on Mother Kali, of course, this is what we call formless form, because not really a form. Kind of go beyond the 4 arms, 8 arms, you know, look at outside, look at her, and then you find out that she's got a subtle form, a subtler form, which is like formless form. That would be the blackness of space that she wears as her cloak, as her robe. And she's naked goddess, so nothing is covered, you know, by nothing. And she dances in throughout all the 3 worlds, and veiled, as it were, by space, by the blackness of space. So probably thinking about this, Kamala Kanda is going, I wonder if she's always black, you know. Is my Mother Kali really black? Couldn't she be red or blue or yellow sometimes? I think basically that takes us more towards the tantric and even maybe the Kundalini yoga system, where you've got colors associated with all 7 chakras. You've got sound, nada, associated with all 7 chakras. You've got Sanskrit, you know, symbols associated with, and you've got a number of petals on each of those, all symbolic of the many worlds inside at different levels. So she will appear in those worlds, as it were, in a different color, and maybe with different forms and with different words to communicate to the people who are on that level of understanding. So here, out here, we need outer images, outer symbols. So you see the Kali temples in India, you know, there's a beautiful, beautiful images. In fact, Ramprasad has a song where he says, you know, it's basically the same thing as Mother, really just an image in the temple made of cork and painted with vermilion paint, and, you know, decked out with sari and beautiful gems, and they worship her with flowers and garlands by the hundreds and thousands, till that whole image disappears under a mound of flowers every day. You've been there, you've seen that.
Yeah.
So all of that is symbolic too of asking what mother is. Who are you? Basically you could say, who am I?
Yeah.
Is the mantra of the discriminating spiritual aspirant. But for the devotee who falls in love with Divine Mother Reality, he might or she might want to say, who are you? Who are you, Mother? What do you see in your meditations? I know what I see in my meditations. What do you see in yours? I'd like to know. There's a song also by Ram Prasad in India.
So it turns it around in a certain way.
Yeah, not I, but thou.
Yeah.
And Ramakrishna was always saying that, not I, but thou.
It reminds me of a poem by Hafiz, the 12th century Sufi poet.
Mm.
And there was I'm not going to recite it, but the title was Never Say It Is Not Me. And the idea or the takeaway you get from the poem is that everything that you see around you that affects you has been put there by the Lord, or it is the God. And so when we make these offerings or create musical pieces, we try to purify ourselves. Sometimes we say, oh, let me see if I can purify myself and be a great person so that I can catch God's glance. But Hafiz is turning it around and saying that all these things around us are actually God saying, glance at me, or glance inwardly. And as you said, what is it that Mother Kali is meditating on? Most likely it's your liberation. or something of that nature.
Or Lord Shiva.
Lord Shiva.
It's because when she says, if you waken her, you better hang on to her skirts. Your coil is uncoiling. The Kundalini teachers ask you, has your coil unfurled yet? That means this coil of Ida Pingala with the Sushumna going up the middle. And Kali, Divine Mother, gets on, Kundalini they call her in that respect. If you awaken her and attract her upwards, she's heading for Lord Shiva here, and you better hang on to her skirts if you want to go with her. She could leave you behind. But you awaken by stages. So she's very much interested in the individual spiritual awakening of the spiritual practitioner. But also she's got a supreme goal, is to unite with Lord Shiva at the crown of the head. And that very song, Makyamar Kalore, says that in its penultimate line, I think. My mind has become fascinated. Look at even Shiva is meditating upon her, you see.
Kamalakanta is amazed to see how Shiva has become mad with ecstasy by meditating on her radiant splendor.
Yeah, her radiant effulgence or her radiant light inside. So, that those two things could be said to be equally important goals from the individual standpoint, the spiritual awakening, and from the ultimate standpoint, you're already that, but you need to unfurl your coil in this lifetime, in this body.
So in the process of arranging this music and rehearsing it and putting it to the master and so forth, you must be meditating upon these verses and keeping your mind at such a very high level. Can you talk about how that the entire process of doing that meditation and keeping your mind at a level that is equal to the the teachings in the in the bhajan here?
There's another song that says, meditate with full force of your being on Mother Kali and try to comprehend her. You'll never do it, but in the attempt your mind will become purified. That's a very nice line. So you put everything into what you're doing to try and dedicate it to Divine Mother, if you're a Shakta or if you're a worshipper of Kundalini and so forth. And then you know that you'll never be able to pin her down or find her or see her necessarily. Her vision is even very rare to the yogis sitting in mountain caves. That's another song. They sit in darkness because her radiant, sparkling effulgence becomes more pronounced if they can have a vision of her in the dark. Not just dark with the eyes closed, which still has some light filtering through the lids, but the sense deprivation darkness, that they'll be able to enjoy this vision all the more. Beautiful songs and sentiments, truth sentiments in these things. So, yeah, the way, the mode, if you will, that you have to put yourself in, it reminds me of a good friend of mine, Gary Dickens, who passed away in 2012. And I just found this out. I haven't seen him for several years. Found this out recently. And you speak of Shakti Bhajan's, the CD. That image is one of his paintings. And Lex Hickson and I commissioned Gary Dickens to paint that Durga riding on a lion through space. Durga is just another Kali, another form of Kali, or vice versa to Kamalakanta and Ramprasad and Sri Ramakrishna. I notice it's one goddess in many forms. So anyway, he painted that, and it's like 5 feet tall and so forth, and I tried to get him to paint Kali, and he said, no, if I paint Kali, my life will change too radically. So that's a good example of if you're not ready to fully dedicate yourself, if you put your mind 100% every day for a matter of days or weeks or months, however long it takes you to compose a piece or to write a poem, or like Lex Hickson writing like 150 poems to her, retranslating Ramprasad's poems into English, beautiful book, or say do a painting of her, then all of a sudden that's concentration. That's the 6th limb of yoga, and that's going to lead you to meditation, the 7th limb of yoga, and that's going to lead you to samadhi, 8th limb of yoga, if you keep it up. And it's just a template for what you should be doing with spiritual life and with life, but you're doing it without her presence. Most people are doing it without knowing that she's at the foundation of all this. She makes your hand pick up the paintbrush. She makes me pick up the pick and write. She makes me think of the music I'm going to put to it, and so forth and so on. And if you're aware of this, then of course it will change your life. You'll, like another song of India says, I woke up one day, my ignorance was gone, utterly gone. So you may have been meditating on her for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and all of a sudden the slow rewards we were talking about it today over breakfast, you and I, how these things all of a sudden come to you. Spiritual fruits don't come like other things, and you have to have a different kind of patience, a different kind of dedication for that. So anyway, Gary Dickens, I heard that he passed away like this, leaning against the wall a little bit. They came into his room. They hadn't seen him for several days. And so I contacted him, and I came across one of the women that knew him really well, and she said, yes, he's gone, but I remember you, and I remember that he loved your music. I remember that he dressed me up as Durga one day, and I posed for that Shakti Bhajan's painting. And I was the model. And he said he was always listening to your music as he painted it, and the other paintings he painted for people. He used to listen to Jaima music for that. So he wouldn't paint Kali, and I had a very hard time getting him to paint Durga, because that too, she's also a goddess of transformation. I mean, you say Lakshmi, wealth, abundance, beauty, very powerful goddess with plenty of wisdom, but abundance of wisdom, but she still is accenting the abundance part of it for most people. Yeah. Then Kali is accenting the let's renounce it all part of it. So, he would have, in fact, I've seen his works. He's painted dozens of Lakshmis and Radhas and Krishnas, but I couldn't really convince him to do Mother Kali.
It's amazing how you put forth a CD and it kind of takes on its own life, right? And then other beings get attracted to that CD and then use it as a spiritual substratum for their works built on top of that, such as the Gary Dickens painting. Yes. Right. That's also kind of these works have come forth from Mother Kali and back to her. They then go, right.
Yes, through her children and back they go to her. Yeah. Full circle.
Shakale Tumara Icha.
That's also another beautiful one.
Yeah.
Not Ramprasad or Kamalakanta.
That's
I think Raj Chandra of it.
Yeah.
Oh Mother, everything happens by your own sweet will. Get my auto harp and I'll start singing.
So let's go to another stotram now. We mentioned first we had a bhajan, and now I've selected a stotram. So let's play a little bit of this one. This is the Mahalakshmi Ashtaka Stotram.
Yes. Namaste astu Mahamaya. Beautiful. Yeah.
O great Mahamaya, the abode of fortune, thou who art worshipped by all the devas, I salute thee. O Mahalakshmi, wielder of the conch, the disc, and the mace, my eternal obeisance to thee.
Namaste astu Mahamaya Shri Pite Surapujite Shankha Chakra Gada Haste Mahalakshmi Namostute.
My salutations to thee, O Mahalakshmi, O thou who ridest the Garuda and art a terror to the Asuras. O Devi Mahalakshmi, remover of all miseries and sufferings, my eternal obeisance to thee.
Namaste Garuda Rude Bola Sura Bhayankari Sarva Papa Hare Devi Mahalakshmi Namostute.
This is the 8 verses on Mahalakshmi. It also is very personal to me. It excited me a little bit. I was in one of my lower points of my life about 10 years ago. I was in the process of getting married, and the concomitances of trying to figure out engagements and family and planning and do I want to be married, right? All of these things, and there was some strife around this topic, and I was pretty low, and so I went to my parents' house. They lived in Chicago at the time, and just tried to find some solace there for a weekend. And I was eating breakfast by myself, and I placed the Hymns to the Goddess CD on, and the Mahalakshmi Stotram started, and on that second verse, I'm gonna read this for a second. My salutations to thee, O Mahalakshmi, O thou who ridest the Garuda and art a terror to the Asuras. O Devi Mahalakshmi, remover of all miseries and sufferings, my eternal obeisance to thee. And upon hearing this, somehow something inside my heart was struck, and waves of compassion just started flowing over me, and tears just came down, kind of surprisingly. Like, I was perfectly fine 10 seconds ago, and now all of a sudden I'm
Blubbering like a baby.
Blubbering like a baby. and I just felt a sense of security at that point, as if all of those parts of my life which were low at that time everything's going to be okay, right? And I would be lifted up naturally, and sure enough, eventually everything does work out in all the ways that it has to work out. The Dharma has to be fulfilled, and for many years, and even now, every time I hear that stotram, I go into the inner recesses of my heart and remember the time when Mahalakshmi was able to strike my heart, and so I'm sure that many other of your students and other people around the world have also felt this way when they hear particular pieces of music or stotrams, and I just want to say thank you for bringing this out.
No, you've never told me that.
Now it's on record.
Now it's on record. Yeah. Yes, well, it's beautiful. Thou who rides the Garuda. I mean, we were just talking about that. So Mother is riding this Kundalini power, up inward and upward, and sometimes she'll strike, you know, with her sword of wisdom, they say, will strike at the heart chakra from the third chakra. This is ancestors and food digestion and babies being born. You know, rebirth is all happening at these three lower chakras. But you know, sometimes she'll test, as it were, and she'll strike out up at that heart, you know, chakra, and see if the consciousness of the apparently individualized consciousness of the practitioner is ready to rise there and stay there. And so these are called bhavas, or moods that come to you. And they have to usually be perked. You know, something has to be pricked in order for that to pierce through that veil, curtain of nescience kind of veil they talk about.
The opportunity has to present itself.
Yeah, and you have to put yourself in the atmosphere of such opportunities. People don't know that. Sometimes they can happen randomly or seemingly randomly, but they're not random, although everything's possible for her. She could make something random happen, no doubt. But you really need to practice the grace of God. Holy Mother said, according to the opportune time, man gets all the facilities for doing good. Then again, according to inauspicious times, he gets the return of all things inauspicious, and he has the facility for doing things negative or bad. So, she concludes, since that's the case with the gunas and the mind cycling, and your karma is coming back, and your mind shifting from day to day in and out of these modes, then you should always prepare yourself, keep yourself prepared every day by doing your sadhana, no matter what happens, positive or negative. So it's up to you to keep yourself in that stream of where she flows. You know, if you know where it is, know where to look, then why aren't you looking there, exposing yourself to her as much as you can? But yes, she who rides the Garuda, it's right there.
So the stotram can remind us how to stay in that space.
Yes, I mean, it can be music can be a very powerful thing, especially when it's dedicated to the divine. I mean, classical music, when I was growing up, I became, here in Portland, you know, a prodigy kind of cellist and won the scholarships and so forth in my time, and I was raised on the classical music, which to me was just the most godly music I had heard. And these composers, I found out many of them were dedicating their music to God, as they saw it, you know, whether they were Christian or whatever, in Europe and America, basically. Classical music was very profound. My best memory about that song is that it was shared with me by Swami Damodaranandaji Maharaj. Now, Swami Damodarananda, when I was in Fiji, and he was head of the center there, he really liked to hear me playing these bhajans I was learning, like Makiyama and others. So he said, you know, I have a couple I know I can teach you. And I said, fine. You know, this one is in 7. Namaste astu mahamai Shri Pite Surapujite 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, you know, there's beautiful thing about India is it has these different time signatures. It's not obsessed with 4/4 time, like even classical music is, up to a certain point. Some composers like Hindemith and so forth, and Piston, and more contemporary composers started breaking the time signatures and going into 5 for a few measures and going back to 4. You know, the 3/4 is just a waltz, you know. So basically, so there was a kind of convention there that was becoming solidified and needed to be broken through. But in India, they never had those limitations. So this piece anyway was in 7, and he taught it to me, and I arranged chords around the words. He taught it to me just as a bhajan, and and then he taught me Vani Sarasvati Vakdevi is the other piece on that CD right after the Lakshmi piece. So those two he taught me, and I'd never heard of them, and he didn't know who wrote them, so I never got the composers for them. I wonder if he wrote them, but I think they are somewhere in the Tantras, maybe they show up or something. So anyway, to finish that story, flash ahead many decades later, he had gone to Australia and been the Swami at the center there after he left Fiji. And you and I actually went to see him in India a couple times toward the end of his life at Bellarmont, Ramakrishna order. And he was going around on crutches at that time saying, Jai Shri Ramakrishna, Jai Shri Ram, all the time. He was in an ecstatic mood.
I had the great privilege of serving him by lifting him up the stairs one day.
Ah, lucky you. And he allowed it, huh? His attendant wasn't around. But leading to an interesting ending to the story was that one night, after you and I had seen him some months, and maybe less than a year ago, is it? He waited till 3 or 4 in the morning, and there are cameras now on Bellarmont grounds at night, you know, because they have to do that because of the times. It didn't used to be that way. But the camera actually is recording him sneaking out of his room, as it were, on his crutches and hobbling across Bellarmont to the river where Swamiji had been cremated, right behind that temple, or one of those temples, Holy Mother or Swamiji, and actually putting his crutches aside and dropping his cloth and committing his body to the river, conscious death. And so we heard about that, and they have that on film. And of course, I don't know if his attendant, what the inner skinny on that is. If maybe he said, "Just you wait here. I'm going to the river. I want to go alone," or whether he said, you know, "Goodbye, friend." You know, but that's one of the 4 ways I found out when I inquired that sannyasam can offer the body consciously back to God. You know, off a cliff or drowned in the Ganges River or fire, immolation or whatever. And they have that very little regard for the body. Very little regard for it. It's just a temple of the spirit as long as it works. And after that, it's just, as Holy Mother said, 10 pounds of ash in the end. Is it? So she too didn't have, and my teacher says that she had no real regard for the world and the body. She had a regard for you, your soul. You must recover it back from matter, and you know, follow her, raise yourself up. And these songs will help you do it.
Yeah.
So when I think of those 2 songs, Swami Damodarananda, who taught me puja, by the way, Hindu puja, it comes to my mind, full force.
Do you consider him a musical guru to you, to your path as well? No?
No, he was no musician.
Okay.
He used to tell me, "Oh, these songs, in the hands of an artist, they come alive." You sing them maybe with the monks or with a few Hindu devotees, and it's all kind of, you know, it's like hearing it with no flavor. But you know, the artistic person with some artistic temperament will bring beauty to it and make it live in that.
The bhakti will come.
Yeah, yeah. So he used to really love that, and the Swamis have loved that about the way I'm able to bring music to these pieces. And I've done it for the West more than for India, because you can find these songs sung by expert Indian singers all over. I was never really an expert singer. I was a classical musician, cellist and guitarist and so forth, pick up the auto harp. But I just had to train my voice myself and help it sing in tune, because I knew what in tune was from my cello playing days. So over time, when I first started singing, I squeaked a lot and, you know, wasn't very full voiced, but then I began to breathe and learned how to sing and learned those songs from the brahmacharis. It's another beautiful story. I would go back to India several times, every year or maybe every 2 years, and this was before the great crowds were flocking there. And some of the swamis who knew what I was about actually let me go back to where only the monks go, which is back in the hall where Vivekananda and Brahmananda and others, a small room behind the outside of Vivekananda's bedroom back there in those days. Took me back in there with Lexixon, and when he was there too. And we went back there and sat in the same places where Brahmananda and Vivekananda used to sing songs and learn them as young men. And then they let me take what was then the new technology. It was called a digital audio tape recorder, DAT, and it was new. So I put that down. One of the brahmacharis and a couple others played the tabla and bells, you know, chimes, kartals, they call them, finger cymbals. And then the harmonium got going, and I turned on the digital audio tape recorder and got these hiss-free, beautiful recordings of these young brahmacharis. And they were all around me. I was the only Westerner on several occasions. Once Lex was there with me. And so all around me, I described it later as like being in an ocean of milk. All these beautiful, young, pure, white boys with their minds set on Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. It's a very wonderful feeling for me. I was probably in my 30s at that time, early 30s, and they were all probably 20 or less, sometimes maybe a little older.
And many of these boys are probably swamis now.
They're really
right?
swamis now. In fact, the one who's singing the songs is a swami. I still know him. But kind of more of the point around this is that I took these songs back, and I would go to India, I'd collect 6 or 8, 10 more, not only just from the brahmacharis, but from some of the householders who knew harmonium and played these songs. And that's how Jaima music got fueled by a lot of its material. Because I wasn't interested in kirtan, singing, dancing, and singing one thing over and over again. I wanted the wisdom songs to bring back to the West, so that the West could be taught Dharma through music was one of my ideas. And evidently it worked in a few cases. It's definitely not a flash of fame or anything, not that I wanted it to be, but maybe over time we've left enough of these behind that people will all of a sudden respond when they hear it.
Yeah, the breadcrumbs have been laid, and
yes, follow the path.
Some people are grabbing them and
exactly
imbibing them. So the 8 verses definitely has a lot more teachings on the Divine Mother. You mentioned that the stotrams are non-dual, but they can come from the Devi tradition as well, right?
Did you mention a stotram?
I think this was the Mahalakshmi stotram.
Oh yes, Mahalakshmi stotram. I think of that as a bhajan, but but it is a stotram because they chant it. Om Aim Hring Sarvadeva Devi Svadapaya. They do it in one tone, and so I put it to music. So it has a melody. Sometimes I've left the melodies the same. Other times I've put melodies of my own to the words. So it depends.
Do the melodies come to you during meditation? How do they come forth?
Occasionally later on they used to, but basically I would just think of the words and compose. I'd sit down with an instrument, find some chords in that case, because auto harp works with chords, guitar works with chords, cello works with single melodies mostly. So you have to have like a piano or some sort of chordal instrument to actually, compose something. It helps that way. And a harmonium also works mostly with chords, although they use it quite just a single finger melody, but sometimes the better harmonium players will actually accompany themselves with chords as they play the melody. So anyway, I would usually think about it. It was a kind of combination of contemplation and what's a good cycle of chords here that would allow some melody to bring out certain facets and be more attracting to the heart, instead of just a straight one-tone thing. And one-tone things can be beautiful.
So I think that was facilitated by your classical training and your time in the orchestra.
Yes.
Right.
Later on I realized that these songs, they weren't created new. They've always been, they always were, and I was just remembering them. Everything, there's nothing new under the sun, Ecclesiastes said. That's a very powerful teaching in terms of time, in terms of everything, in terms of the battle of Kurukshetra, the Gita, everything, scriptures. There's endless cycles going on. Enlightened souls come into the world to get you off those cycles, if you're ready. So the songs and scripture and puja later to me begin to feel more like something that I had recovered from the hoary eternal past rather than something I discovered anew or myself composed. Wasn't at all. So that's like
eternal.
The ego has really nothing to do with that, except if it gets ripened, then it can remember through the intellect these memories of these beautiful pieces and songs. I mean, those songs, for instance, were in Swami Damodarananda's minds for decades before I came along, and he shared them to me. So it's sort of like that. There's a storehouse for these things, for the Dharma too.
Yeah.
And it's not subject to time. I mean, time plays into it, then you rediscover them. And that's one of the problems of the ego, is the composers and people putting their own names on things, name and form on it. They should just say, Mother gave me this, mother is now presenting it to you, and it'll go back to mother, and I have nothing to do with it. I mean, this was what Sri Ramakrishna's favorite stance was.
Yeah, like how Swami Damodara Nanda said, I don't know who made this song, who composed this song.
Yeah.
And
I wasn't interested either.
yeah, sometimes it says traditional, right?
If I had to put it on a CD
down.
liner, I just put unknown.
Yes.
Put this up as, it's immaterial in the sense who wrote it. Because the ego is of course empty, and so it would only be interesting to a historian or somebody who wanted to give credit or blame, as the case may be. Oh, that's a horrible piece. Who wrote that? Is he? Not me.
So let's go on to the third piece that we're going to discuss today.
Great, this is fun. Name that song.
Fun. Name that tune. And this is a classic in the Ramakrishna lineage, of course. And we're talking about Om Hring Ritang.
Oh, okay. Time to tone things down here a bit and get serious. Yeah.
So let's listen to that.
Moham Kasham Bahukritam Nabajayatoham Tashma Tvameva Sharanam Mama Dina Bandho Bhaktir Bhagashcha Bhajanam Bhava Bheda Kari Gachan Jalam Suvipulam Kamanaya Tattvam Bhaktro Drito Pihridi Me Nachabati Kinchit Tashma Tvameva Sharanam Mama Dina Bandho Tejastaranti Tarasa Tvayi Tripta Trishna Rage Krite Ritapate Tvayi Rama Krishna.
So this Om Hring Ritang, of course, is the Arti hymn, the Vesper hymn of the Ramakrishna order, and it has so many deep meanings as well. And we sing it here in SRV at Vesper as well. I have fond memories of taking turns going around and reciting the English, and we've all done it so many times now over the years that it's pretty much memorized. Not even through any effort.
Yes.
Right. It's just repetition has done that. So I do have some questions about Om Hring Ritang. I want to see what struck you first when I played that music.
Of course, Swami Vivekananda's offering to Sri Ramakrishna, and especially what we call the chorus or the last verse, Om Shtapakaya Cha Dharmasya Sarvadharma Swarupine Avatara Varishtaya. Those are words that have evidently, if I remember right, came to Swamiji spontaneously one night when he was doing a puja at one of the devotees' house in Calcutta, I think. And there wasn't a lot of devotees of Ramakrishna at that time. There were when Vivekananda was alive, he was still introducing Ramakrishna to India and then to the West. And so this came out of him. Om Shtapakaya Cha Dharmasya. He's Shtapakaya, he's steady in all the dharmas. And Cha, he's the essence. Sarva Dharma Swarupine. And he's the essence of all dharmas too. Avatar of Varishtaya, he represents the very best of the avatars. To him we pay our salutations. That, of course, immediately strikes me through remembering Swami Vivekananda. Memories, main memory is putting it to orchestral music.
That was my question.
And I never heard much back from anyone about that. I thought it was such a great thing that it could be put to classical music. And so I got French horn I was in the symphony at the time, so I talked a lot of my friends into coming to the recording studio, strings, winds, French horn.
How did you motivate the Western symphony players to come and play for a
little bit of a twisting of the arm.
Okay.
It wasn't a union gig. They would get paid. I think maybe I did offer them something, to help them get out the studio and gas money, as it were. But they brought their instruments, and I actually recorded them in sections, the winds first, the horns, and then the strings, and then put my own cello a little bit on it as one of the soloists. So that's I remember doing that, and that was definitely composition. I sat down and I put orchestration, 4-part harmony, they say, to this song, this bhajan, in Sanskrit that he had offered to Sri Ramakrishna as a musical offering. So basically that and Om Kandana Bhava Bandhana, and those two. And then there's another one called a Chandala, which later I put into 4-part harmony for voice. That's a beautiful one that they don't do much. You don't hear it much, but I like that one almost the best of all of them. And then there's of course Om Sarva Mangala Mangalye. Sarva Mangala Mangalye. They sing it in the temples, both the Pravrajakas, the women, and the Swamis, with the devotees, sometimes 500, 1,000 at a time, and beautiful, echoing, at dusk through the temple, next to the sacred river. There you are, sitting there, and hearing it. So yeah, lots of good memories. And I guess I have to add in the final one is that my teacher, Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj, here in Portland, whenever I came here from Hawaii, because I was born in the area, and then went away to Hawaii, found out about my teacher, came back to this area, and started attending upon Holy Company with him. So when you can get into the shrine, when you're allowed to get into the shrine, because they keep that kind of quiet and hidden, and you go to the talks and everything, but eventually you're allowed into the shrine at first. Till you get initiated, you can go in all the time. Meditation and so forth, when you're more serious. So every night at Vespers, as you say, is an interesting word, then he would have them sing Om Ring Ratong. He must have sung that hundreds and thousands of times over the 40 years or so he was here in the West. So I implemented it into the SRV puja, and we sing it, at least once or twice a week, and maybe more, depending on how many events are going on in any given week. So that's also another memory of how often he did it. And I remember putting it to music, and he asking me to take charge of the music for whenever I came. There's a few years where I was sort of, the unofficial musician of the Portland Vedanta Society, and he just let me do what I want. I get a tambura, sing this, sing that, offer pieces, play at the Durga Puja. Beautiful time, remember. Finally, he said one day he wasn't asking me to play music anymore, so suddenly I said, well, I can offer music again tonight. He says, we're not interested in music, we're interested in philosophy. So I thought, okay, my time's over in that mode, I'll give it up. But anyways, those are some of the memories that come back with Om Ring Ratong.
Great.
Yeah, beautiful.
So I want to get a little bit into the meanings of Om Ring Ratong. So I'm going to recite the second verse in English here.
By memory, right?
Yeah. Not on camera. This play called life can be transformed by love, adoration, and understanding. These three bring us quickly to our goal, the truth of Brahman. But alas, though I speak these words with my lips, they find no echo in my heart. Therefore, I claim refuge in thee, O friend of all beings. Mm-hmm. So,
Mama Dina Bandhu. Dina means friend. Yeah.
when he says this play called life can be transformed by love, adoration, and understanding, those three, I haven't had those put together in a teaching I've heard in SRV, and they seem like a tripoti somehow. I was wondering if you could expound on those.
Love, adoration, understanding. Well, love in that regard sounds much like adoration. I mean, it's kind of hard. They're in the same bhakti kind of context, I think. But the love that you have for a great soul like Sri Ramakrishna, like the 16 direct disciples had for him, they said he loved me so much more than my parents, they all said. His love was really genuine. So that's a kind of almost prema bhakti. It almost puts it highest, even away from worship of an external thing. Because they said when he passed, they thought they would be heart-stricken, But when he found out that when he passed, all of a sudden they saw that his body had been the last barrier to really having him fully inside of them. And every one of them, to the last man, said they were all of a sudden filled with him when he passed. So that's love, and real divine love, authentic love, what do they call it, with no selfish motivation behind it, unconditional, you see, with a capital U. Adoration then would be like Swamiji writing this song to him. He just feels such a heart love for this being in the form, in the body, and gratitude that the Lord had actually come into the body for the sake of the devotees, like Buddha, Krishna, and Christ, and others had done.
Complete positive experience.
Yes, and so that puts you in a devotional mood, and also a devotional mode in which you can make these offerings with the feeling of separation between you and he. Qualified dualism or dualism, which is a very rich and wonderful thing to experience. Understanding, clarity, jnanam, dharma. The mind gets clear, and then it's not loving the wrong things in all the wrong places at the wrong time. And that's the problem with conditional love, is that people are suffering that because they haven't cleared their mind yet with the teachings. And so when you come to a Vedanta society like I did, and like Six and our founder did, and others, you find that there's not a lot of outer bhakti going on. It's all very deep bhakti, but it's behind the scenes, like that shrine room you couldn't go into for a while until you earned it. And then what you find there is these talks, these discourses, these transmissions given by these swamis on the Dharma and the teachings. And that's like the qualified dualism, qualified non-dualism, Vashishtadvaita they call it. So you're actually putting the best of all three worlds together there, Dvaita, Vashishtadvaita, and Advaita, because Prema will make you one with the Father, and the teaching will give you the qualified look, which you need as at least a concession, and then Bhakti will be this rich dualism. That's kind of how I look at that line. And if it didn't matter what meal we were eating, if we were with the teacher, he'd end with, "O Mother, grant us pure love, pure knowledge, and pure devotion," which is rather the same thing there.
So the understanding then gets, that's what ties everything together.
And deepens over time.
Deepens.
Yeah. You can hear the words like we were talking at the beginning, Vakdevi, the power that's actually in the word. Nobody thinks of that. They think it's in the word and the meaning. They're still falling short. You have to go to the matra. That's the letter of the word. And this is how you begin to march in, like a scientist would take an object and take a splinter of it and march into the atom and proton, neutron, subatomic particles. That's going deeper into matter and finding the final little particles that are very powerful. So powerful, boom, if you use them wrong. But the same with then this particle of wisdom, I call it, the jnana matrika, or it's a particle of wisdom that comes from the word, it comes from the letter, and then inside the letter you begin to explore it, and you find out that there are also, if you were let's call them subatmic particles of power, intelligence, pure intelligence, buddhi, that if you take it in, you split them like you would split an atom externally, they implode. They don't explode. My teacher, Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj, used to say that. He said, the West has split the atom and released a great force for domination, and evil and power. He said, but Divine Mother and Shri Krishna has come and split the atom of Maya and released a great inward power of Shakti. Is one of the ways he would explain it. So this is all taking the particle internally, I think, not just externally. It's atmic, not just atomic. So then that's what's in a letter of a word. Like, say, A-U-M. I mean, there's no more profound set of teachings about Dharma than Gaudapada and Shankara and others, and Tantra and Yoga and Vedanta and Buddhism, all talking about Om, which every mantra starts with. Spell it philosophically correctly, A-U-M. Those are 3 letters. And A basically is your waking state, U is your dreaming state, and M is your deep sleep state. Or if you are following the path of adoration, instead of non-duality, then A is Brahma, U is Vishnu, M is Shiva. See, so all the assignments of Om, you meditate upon those when you say the word. You don't just say Om and stop, you see. And then all the people who don't like spirituality will go Om, like my students in the prison. I was visiting them yesterday. I go to several prisons. So when we meditate, everyone comes up to us and chides us. Om, they say. And say we're sitting like this. They go Om, like it's some funny thing, that they want to irritate you with. But you say that word, Dirgha Pranava. It's the unstruck sound, and it's got all those implications to it that have to proceed by you understanding each separate letter, and then what's in the letter. It goes inward. What to say? It's a mystic path.
So I can't think of any other way to end this this discussion than discussing the Dirgha Pranava and the Anahata.
Yes.
So we can conclude our discussion of our three pieces here.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to express that. Thank you.
So we'll end with a chant from Om Hring Ritam. So Om Shtapakaya Cha Dharmasya Sarva Dharma Swarupane Avatar Varishtaya Ramakrishna Te Namaha. O Ramakrishna, you are the foundation of the truths of all religions. You are the essence of the truths of all religions. You are the embodiment of the greatest teachers of all religions, and therefore we bow down to you in great reverence.
Aparupa Priya Darshana, Aparupa Priya Darshana.